What's up? It's Tom. We have a new era of Twins baseball coming in 2026, and it's not really the one we all envisioned, which was new ownership. But Rocco Baldelli will not be returning as Twins manager, despite the fact that his option was picked up earlier this season. Not the weirdest thing to see that from a manager having an option picked up, or even having years of under a contract get fired. It's kind of manager salaries are a drop in the bucket in baseball terms. So not completely unusual to see that. I guess if I was to say if I was expecting this or not, I would say yes. But I also said at the end of last year that I would have fired Rocco, and he stuck around. So, I'll share some more thoughts on general thoughts on Rocco in a moment. But just on whether or not this is surprising, again, I think that's tough for me to answer. I would have let him go, so maybe I'm not as shocked as some other people are. There's certainly, I'll say this though, there certainly weren't like indications that this was coming. You couldn't read through any tea leaves by the front office or the team that were kind of giving hints at this possibility. Obviously, the Twins had a very disappointing season and were horrible down the stretch. But, credit to Rocco Baldelli, though, from a people management perspective, there really wasn't any kind of a clubhouse meltdown. I remember reading, I can't remember which reporter this was, probably Dan Hayes of The Athletic, possibly, but someone actually pointed that out, that in this collapse, it might have been Aaron Gleeman too, somebody had pointed out that during this collapse, the clubhouse was never really lost necessarily. That wasn't really part of the problem here. So I guess credit to Rocco for kind of navigating that difficult trade deadline and kind of keeping everybody pointed the same direction, but obviously that direction was down, unfortunately. We're just going to stop beating around the bush there. They were terrible. And, when you take 10 guys away or whatever it was at the deadline, I mean, what do you expect? So I don't think I wouldn't anticipate this decision comes based off of how poorly the Twins ended their year, how poorly they performed post-trade deadline. It's got to be something else. And, listen, the Twins have underperformed to their expectations the past two seasons. And, is that all on Rocco Baldelli? No. Could they have given Rocco a lot more to work with? Absolutely. But the fact is, I say this a lot when conversations about managers or general managers, there's only 30 of these jobs. There are only 30 of these jobs out there. So, for Rocco to have been in a managerial position for as long as he has, I think it's pretty impressive. Again, I would have switched things up last year. The collapse was a huge red flag to me. Beyond anything of what you think to Rocco's micromanagement, in-game management, whatever, this team just hasn't been as motivated or prepared, to be honest, in my opinion, as I feel like they should have been. And I think that does come back to the manager. I think David Popkins leaving and having success in Toronto is a pretty big red flag. Some of that stuff can be overblown, and a lot of stuff comes down to the players got to play. So I think a lot of analysis on managers or coaches is maybe it comes back to, well, the players didn't play well. I don't think managers usually get fired just because they did a bad job. It's often because the players didn't do their job. So, it's more difficult to fire all the players, although the Twins certainly kind of tried to do that with it at the trade deadline. They're pushing buttons. We'll put it that way. At least that was my frustration at the end of last year was, how are you going to run it all back? How are you going to bring everything back and expect different results? Not that everything they've done in terms of changing things up I agree with or that I'm excited about or I think is positive, but I will say this, at least they're having the guts to make some changes, and manager is a big change. Rocco Baldelli is out. Kind of switching gears toward, that was my analysis on Rocco Baldelli, the manager. As Rocco Baldelli, the guy, and I feel the same way about Derek Falvey, these are likable guys, in my opinion. I liked Rocco Baldelli, and I think his players liked him. I don't have anything personal against Rocco Baldelli. It's just the results aren't there. At the end of the day, that's what it all boils down to. So it's not like I have some vendetta against Rocco and I was out to get him from last year on. But again, there's only 30 of these jobs. He's a great candidate for some other type. He could be a front office guy, and then he actually might be better suited to be in a front office, to be completely honest. Rocco Baldelli, and with a young family, maybe that fits his lifestyle better. I could definitely see that for him if he wants to manage. There's some other opportunities out there. The coaching carousel's already started to spin. Some guys got fired in season, so something I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are. Would you rather see the Twins hire someone without managerial experience again, like Rocco Baldelli, or would you rather see kind of one of these retread managers that are out there? I mean, Derek Shelton got fired in Pittsburgh, so he's got Twins ties. He's out there. Are you interested in one of those kind of retread guys, a guy who has previous experience, or would you be open to another like Rocco Baldelli, someone who doesn't have experience? Internal candidates, there are plenty of guys on the staff. I'm not sure how much if the whole staff is going to get let go. Those details are yet to come. We'll keep an eye on those. Again, this is just breaking as I discuss this, but we'll find out. Certainly, Jace Tingler has managerial experience. There's some other guys in the staff that have managed in the minor leagues. Looking to the minor leagues, Toby Gardenhire has been managing in St. Paul for quite some time. A guy who is pretty well liked by his players. It's kind of a tough time, though, to be sort of brushing up his resume because the Saints also really stumbled. And win-loss results aren't the biggest thing in AAA. That's not the most important thing, but they were horrible to end the season. They had a gigantic losing streak and just got really ugly there. If you want to point to the guy, I think internally who has the most shine on him right now, I would say Brian Dinkelman. And I would say Brian Dinkelman is a guy that you really don't want to lose to another organization. It's not all that common that teams are poaching minor league coaches from other ones, but Brian Dinkelman has had a pretty special run early on in his managerial career. Won the Midwest League with the Colonels a couple years back. This was his first year in Double-A, and took over for Ramon Borrego, who was so well liked. He got a spot on the big league club. So he's coaching in the majors now. Ramon Borrego was very popular. I was curious to see how that transition would go. And Wichita was much better this year than they had been the previous year or two. So Brian Dinkelman, with a roster he was familiar with, guys that he'd coached in Cedar Rapids, helped get more out of that team than they'd seen. Is it too early? He's 41 years old, so it's not like there's a lot of managers that are pretty young these days compared to, I feel like, the old days. And then, of course, there's always a few really old guys managing. But, is it too early to go that way? I think there's a good argument to say maybe there is. Maybe Brian Dinkelman's not ready for that yet. But if you're looking for a name in the minor leagues to throw out there, he would be the guy for me. Brian Dinkelman. Who knows how much more is going to change here, because maybe it's not just Rocco Baldelli. Maybe we see some big changes in the front office. Of course, Thad Levine leaving, however that went. I can't remember how they phrased that. I don't think he was technically fired. I'm not sure how they specifically worded that one, but he left, and then, of course, Falvey was promoted, and now Jeremy Zoll is kind of the head, technically the head guy in the GM seat. Maybe there's some changes there. We'll see. I don't think it's too often that a team only lets go of their manager. So I think this is probably a sign of more things to come, and we'll see how it all shakes out. But that's the news. And again, I want to hear from you. Would you prefer someone with MLB managerial experience next, or would you prefer kind of a fresh slate? And you didn't mention those guys. There's quite a few former Twins that could come up in that conversation. Quite a few. Again, I think guys who are interested in managing. So Torrey Hunter is kind of a name in that mix, who would probably be a popular. I think any rehire of a former Twin would go over pretty well right now. So we'll see what their motivation is. Thanks for checking this one out. I appreciate you. We'll talk again soon.